Hi friends, Scott Dunn over at Rocket 9 Solutions. This video is about things that have been on my mind for a while about what does it look like to move forward with AI. If you're in a management position, leadership position, if you're trying to help your company move forward with AI, this video is for you. Certainly, the genesis of this was those who have been through my leadership classes, my Expert Achiever Catalyst, as a manager, as a leader, leading change culturally, competing values framework, or leading change via business goals with P2A. But I realized more people needed to hear it because that's one part how to, it's another part dire warning, which is not my style, but I felt this is really important and I want to put this out there. It's a talk I'm giving tomorrow, and I'll also submit for Agile 2026. So let's jump into this. So what does it look like to lead change? So this is the business case we would normally start with. Anytime we're trying to lead a change in an organization, is there a sense of urgency? This is a classic paradigm of any kind of change model. Is there a clarion call about we need to move and here's why? But certainly these 3 points, complexity and uncertainty is really significant and continues to grow. The complexity around AI and the expansiveness of it, trying to stay on top of it. I don't know anyone, even on my team, that stays on top of all the things going on with AI. It's moving so fast. It's so broad from dev to every single department in the company that can leverage AI and the ways it can be used and how it can be used is really, really significant. Right now, in the middle box about the choice we have, and this is where I feel like I'm trying to be honest with you and direct without seeming doom and gloom, but I do think this is important because it seems like there's really 3 cases that I'm seeing out there. You're AI native because you just started with it. That's what your company was about. You're AI emergent because you're figuring out how to bring this out to the marketplace in the way that you work throughout the company, etc. Or you're just going to be obsolete because the power of AI to simplify work, to make things more efficient, to come up with new ideas, to put information out there, validate data, voice agents to interview customers, AI assisted development that can do the work of a dozen developers and faster. We're seeing this again and again by trusted voices out there. It has arrived in this fullness of what it's capable of doing, and now it's just a matter, if we're slow to adopt AI, it's not about the power of AI, it's about the humans inside the walls of the building and how that rolling out change goes. I just heard this today from someone who works with a lot of companies who said, the only thing that's going to slow down AI adoption is the humans and these large corporations. So we're in that space now, but how do we handle this? But those who have been around in the courses that I've taught, you're used to dealing with this aspect of complex domain where we know some of what's being asked of us and some of the how, but not everything. But you take steps, you take bites and figure that out. In the end, that last box is a speed question because you can pause and ask yourself, if you're a manager or a leader, if this is really doubling every few months. And what we even saw this last quarter is, once again, very, very significant with Anthropic put out. It seems like everyone agrees with that. How does your style keep up with that? How are we enabling the teams underneath us? How are we empowering them to do this if we're not in it right now to just get on the train of where this is going and help with that? These are just results, and just in case anyone's not aware of the power of this for business results, these are really significant. Klarna cut resolution time 82%, Amazon operating margin up 65%, next day deliveries up 30%, Duolingo Q4 last year 300% net profit increase. That's astounding. Morgan Stanley, a traditional old school very large bank, increased client engagement 500, 600%. Let's say like AI and it's not human and we want to keep that human aspect. This is the face of it for your clients, and they're saying massive 5x, 6x improvements is really, really steady while saving them time, 10 to 15 hours a week. And there's much, much more than that, but I try to get just a quick cross section to show that companies are getting real bottom line results. So if I'm competing against Morgan Stanley or Duolingo and Amazon, how am I staying up if I'm not moving already right now on this would be what I would be thinking. So we want to take one step back, and that is for those who are helping to lead this change, or if you're just a manager or leading in some role. And I think some of these roles like product management, product owner, project manager are all leadership aspects as well. We have these classic 3 levels of leadership from Bill Joyner's Leadership Agility, and you can see like we have this progression. For those who aren't familiar with this, you're going from left to right. Experts, someone who they have all the information and all the answers. That's why they got promoted to the position that they're in. That was me when I was a manager. So if there's problems with anything, team members would come to me and I would give them the answers. Here, check this, do this on the service, check the build manifest. I'm the answer man, and it felt really good. The day for me was I solved a lot of people's problems, right? That's adding value. And in fact, there'd be times when I wouldn't be at work, I'd be off a day, and I'd come back, and things would kind of fall apart. And I hate to say it, but in the moment, like, well, what can I say? I'm pretty important here, right? The problem is, what if I wanted to be away for a longer period of time? And literally, they'd be saying, Where are you going? How do we get a hold of you? Because they knew, senior management knew, if I wasn't around, there'd be problems that couldn't be resolved without my knowledge. So I realized I kind of dug my own hole there. And it's be frustrating to come back and say, hey team, how'd that go on the release? And say, well, we ran into a problem. What'd you do? Like, what do you mean? What did we do? We waited for you to get back and make sure it was done right. So that's the expert. They inadvertently become micromanagers because they are dictating the solutions to people. Even if they are averse to micromanagement, they know the right way. And a little bit like my way or the highway, why would you do it differently? The problem is, once they're in management, especially 2 levels above, they're a little disconnected from the individual contributors and the reality of how that work goes. And you can kind of feel that disconnect if you've been in certain meetings where, like, what's this person saying, right? And it's tough because you report to them, or you report to the boss, your boss reports to them. So you're very careful. And we can see companies kind of go off of cliffs like this because you end up being left only with groupthink of people who are afraid to say no, and the only people who will agree either just don't know or are playing politics. Achiever, the next level up, is the same in sense of they have all the information, they're the experts, but they have a much more polished way, a political way, corporate way of bringing people together. They can move at a higher level, like program level, certainly project level. The challenge is because they still have that internal expert, it just comes out in different ways. And it's actually, I think, in some ways more difficult than the expert because you might be in a meeting where they're saying, hey, I'd like to run this idea by you. And people are giving them feedback, but they're kind of dismissing that feedback. Like, oh, you're concerned about the vendor? That's not really your area to be concerned about, right? Any other feedback? Well, I think this would be a problem. You're not as experienced. I can understand why you think that way, but really it's not going to be a problem. Any other feedback? And everyone's looking around like, I don't think he really wants feedback. I don't think he really wants a discussion. He wants us to just rubber stamp his idea. And you can feel like trying to get everyone on the same page or get them on board, get them to buy in. And really what that's turning into is like a form of manipulation. That's why Achiever seems like they're collaborating with a lot of people, seems like they're moving things forward, but no one's genuinely getting their own ideas, if it's against what that person's already thinking, into the mix. That last area of the green, catalyst, you notice it's only 10%. Very few are catalysts. Catalyst is genuinely able to cultivate other people's ideas, knows how to pull ideas out of people, certainly the quiet ones, the voices that maybe get overlooked when there's loud voices in the room. They know how to navigate and facilitate meetings so that all the voices get heard. They know how to get group decisions in the way like everyone votes or everyone's contributing. So if everyone's contributing, you really do get that real ownership because it is their own ideas. They're going to buy into that more and give all their energy, all their passion, excitement, extra time, whatever, because it means something to them. Catalyst knows how to find the consensus among lots of different voices. Catalyst knows how to build up people to draw that out of them while also giving their own expertise so they can get an idea from someone and say, that is good. One thing I've always found helpful is X, Y, and Z, just to contribute and level that person up where it makes sense. So there's sometimes they might say, I'd love to hear a bunch of ideas and bring them to me and I'll decide. They might switch it to, I'll let all of you decide. So they know where to trust the team and they know how to keep growing the team to empower them in that way. So that's a quick explanation of this funnel. You can find other videos on the channel about this as well. But look at this funnel in a different way on a pie chart. So now we have that expert. You can see clearly it's the majority of people. Now the problem with this that we're going to get into, if you're the expert, you're in this position because you know the most. You're in this position, you've been there the longest, you know the systems the most thoroughly, you know how things get done, you can answer all the questions around how policies get approved or whatever the workflows are. You were there when it got created, all that stuff. But if you're still like the answer person for all this is my concern for you. And there's a lot of you out there based on these studies that Bill Joyner did. The concern I have is that winter is coming. And I might chuckle, but because we know that phrase, right, from Game of Thrones, but it is serious that those type of tasks of giving answers and directives like that is exactly what AI is really, really good at already, very capable. And you might think, well, I've asked ChatGPT some questions. It doesn't really understand the way we approve policies here. It doesn't really understand the way the construction industry works. Well, fair, because it knows the summation and average of all these things, so a predictive model. But it doesn't take much to then say, actually, let me upload a few files of cases we've won in court before. Let me upload a few files of the last couple of years of financials. Let me upload the data from Google Analytics for our last few marketing campaigns. Then it knows your particular one. And then it's going to be just as intelligent, just as quick, but about your particular domain. And again, it doesn't take a lot of work to train it on your data. Now, we're not talking about, well, Scott, we're not going to do that because it's not safe. We don't upload stuff to ChatGPT. I'm not saying that you would upload it because this is proprietary data. I'm saying that when you have it in-house, it's fairly easy to do. And in the past, it would have been like, well, Scott, there's no way we're going to host a whole LLM inside, all the infrastructure needed for that. The cost of that, the expertise, these engineers are $500,000 each. Part of the reason that OpenClaw and now Claude Coworker are exploding. Some people have been in this space since when AI was coming out, especially with ChatGPT. They're saying OpenClaw is the most powerful thing that's happened since then, is because now all that power of the LLM and its ability, not only that, to talk to other LLMs, to talk with and engage with other models, just giving it a goal, not telling it, I want this formatted this way, where it just says, create a bunch of assets. It will figure those things out, but it's running on your machine. We don't have to go through all that expense and work of that. A lot of these actually models are now already coming pre-trained in specific industries. So there's thousands of AI companies out there who are doing it just for the legal industry, just for the construction industry. There's more money being spent in venture capital for AI than any other area, significantly. And these are the biggest numbers we've ever seen. These will be the biggest IPOs ever in the history of the world, because now you have 1,000 one-offs. They will also give you your particular slice that's already ready for 90% of what that is, and the rest you can tinker with. And the costs of all those areas have dropped significantly, whether it's creating video or images. They're really coming down to fractions, small fractions of what it used to cost before. So all that power, all that ability is now going to be available securely, cheaply, affordably. And we're going to see a massive rollout of that this year. So again, if that's your role at the company, that you know so much and you can answer all these questions, that's exactly what they're going to get for almost nothing, running 24/7, and actually continues to grow, and they can feed it other things. So I'm just very concerned. Now, on the positive side, before you get terribly depressed about what I said, there is a bright spot in all this, and that is that catalyst to the side, that green, the person that can develop people, get consensus among a bunch of different voices, knows how to navigate all that, knows how to move us all towards a grander, bigger picture vision and the importance of that. That catalyst aspect, it cannot be replaced by AI. That's a very human element of that. So not only would it have been good in the past to say, I probably should move more of my time and my cycles from expert to achiever to catalyst, now it feels like an imperative. And not just for you. You might think, I'm good, Scott. Think about your people. There's not one company that I've been seeing or talked to that it's not on the table in some form about what cuts are we going to make once we're really using AI. And I don't think it's necessarily right. It shouldn't be one for one, because you could save all that money and reinvest it in new markets and new areas. I used to be like, absolutely do that. But I hate to say, I don't see companies do that very much. That we're going to take all these great winnings and move into other areas. I mean, Google's certainly done it with a whole lot of different products and a few others, but by and large, most don't. It's not easy to move into new spaces. It's certainly not easy to pivot. So I'm not going to bank on most of these companies are going to leverage AI, get all these wins, efficiency wins, automate everything, and then take all those winnings and invest them into a new area of the business. I think they're just going to do the easy thing, which is show those earnings results by cutting the biggest cost in almost every company, unless you're in the capital space, construction, consumer goods. But if you're certainly in software, your biggest cost is going to be people. So as a leader, think about your people, because at least we can equip them. There's two things can happen. Either we don't move very far, very fast, big consulting comes in, or we just think we're using AI, so they make cuts, right? And this is a normal thing. We just do regular riffs of people for whatever reason. Well, now your people, some of them go out doing nothing but, well, I had Copilot and I used it a little bit with Excel or something, and it's going to be tough. So think about them as well. If you care for the people and you feel like you try to help them grow and shepherd them and want what's best for them, I think that's another imperative you might want to consider. So what you can do is what I was saying about move from expert to achiever to catalyst. We got a blueprint to be able to do just that. So rather than try to think of the things you do in a typical workday, we can show you just a very easy way to have quick answers for your given job, what kind of things could be automated with AI, and what those wins might look like so you can begin moving forward. Also, you can build someone that's like a pair. If you think of, like in our technical classes, Paul Moore will talk about pair programming or mobbing. So whenever we're pairing or body doubling with someone else, think about how AI can be that for you. And you can, in the same way I said, we can train things up. You can train it up on everything from not just your job role, but the people on their personality types, your personality type, put in your Myers-Briggs, your Strengths Finder. So it's like getting this expert consultant who's just great at your particular job, giving you input and idea, and it continues to grow as you use it more and more. So you can build your own, fairly easy to get started with that. And that last note is you're now buying back time to practice and move into those catalyst aspects, coaching and developing other people. In fact, you can use AI to get ideas on how to do just that. If that's not been something you're doing, you don't have to sit there and try to figure out ways of doing that. I'm not the most creative person, so I just ask lots of questions and get those ideas. They might not be perfect, they might be the best ideas, but at least you're moving forward. As I would say, do something and inspect and adapt. So we've got some ideas for that we're going to show you. This is the first one I just mentioned, so you can use this tool from SmarterX platform. I really appreciate it. And if you're working with us for AI enablement, that would be our recommendations. We would bring you into the SmarterX platform, help you with the coaching side, and we can train up on the specifics that aren't covered by that, but it's really quality stuff. You can use this Jobs GPT. If you go to ChatGPT, search for Jobs GPT, and then just enter a job role, and it's going to say, okay, here's all the tasks, there's best practices, what they would be doing in that role. So I put in, for this one, IT manager. I've worked with a lot of them, and these are the tasks it came up with: IT strategy and planning, infrastructure management, cybersecurity oversight, vendor management, etc. And that next column you see, this is what we call your exposure level, and this is how capable does AI need to be to do the things underneath that category. The stage AI is now, it's E9. So really everything in this list can be handled by AI, so we don't even need to worry about that anymore, about the exposure level. Look at your estimated time savings, and if I'm just looking for ROI, quick wins, which makes the most sense, I'm just going to drop down here. Looks like documentation reporting, 50 to 70% estimated time saving. That's really significant. Not just for you, because I think that's great, but if we're looking for getting more support from your leadership with AI in terms of training, tooling, get outside consulting help, get coaches to help, then the best thing I've seen ever help is show real results. And then they're like, oh, we want more of that. Whatever that was, keep doing that. So that's what would be like, well, here's where we're leveraging AI. So there's more I can share about that. If you pick any of these areas, you can drill down into them. So if we pick out like the infrastructure management category from before, you can see you can drill down even more specifics. So cloud resource management, capacity planning, etc. Again, what's our exposure level? We see a lot more E9s in this category, but it's capable. So a current client was saying they're actually using it to predict outages now. It knows all the server logs of the history. It's predicting even things that they've forgotten about, like, oh, it's picking up the same characteristics of what led to the last failure before it happened. So not only helping with that, predicting against that. Rationale just explains why that is and what you could be doing for that. Now, this is a quick snapshot of that other category for just building the co-catalyst, the person you would pair with. So I would fire up during the day and ask it questions, but it knows everything about me. So here's a template you could use in a number of ways. I'll show you how to plug it in, but who am I? What's my company? What are my core beliefs, guiding principles, my role specifically? You're telling it what it's going to be doing. I also added things like tone, because I think there's times I want to shape the tone, so I might have one that's more about creating client-facing documentation, but I want that to be very corporate and very professional. I also have a tone that I like for myself that's more blunt. You could say it's snarky, but it makes it easier for me to read. It's almost fun and engaging. Conversation starters, so you can prompt it to say, ask me about a problem, about a goal, about opportunity, something like that. So you can give it prompts to start with and responsibilities. On the responsibilities, I put one in there that was from the same list because there was a lot in it. So leadership and team development, that makes sense for manager and leader. Support leadership and nurturing team culture, improving employee engagement, developing key talent. It's good stuff. We should be doing that. Provide guidance on delegation, conflict resolution, and leadership development. And it will be giving you that. So there's so much to our roles sometimes. We're not really equally good at all those areas. So for me, creativity is one, attention to detail is one. So I will use AI to essentially hire into my weakness that now AI can help catch those details. I'll have it summarize contracts and give me the bottom lines on things. Now I'll still keep a human in the loop and review those, but boy, it saves a lot of time. It saves a lot of the mental energy that I want to save. And on the creativity, I'll just say, give me 3 ideas about X, Y, and Z. Here's what I'm thinking or looking for, and I'll just run with the one. I'd rather move forward with something than sit there in analysis paralysis. And done is better than perfect. So let's get something done and move forward with that. So let me show you how we can use those. So we're a Google shop, so we use Google AI Studio, we use Google Gems, Gemini, etc. So on the left, what you see is this is AI Studio, and it has run settings before you do a prompt there, and I can give it systems instructions. So I've made several. One, obviously, this I did our space that we're in, and I'm a mentor for that. a product strategy consultant. I love Marty Kagan and David Bland. Ikagi? I'm saying it wrong probably. It's kind of like your hedgehog concept, like what are you passionate about, what are you good at, what can you make money from, what are needs in the world. So you're trying to figure out the best way I can be spending my time on something. But I also put all the team information, the history, personalities, etc. So it literally say like, why don't you hand this to so-and-so? They're better at that. And, right? It knows. So that's very helpful. Over to the right, you can kind of see we have a gem, which is just a way of trying to save a prompt context. And then every time I pull up like the sales gem, it can already know like, here's our sales strategy. We're relational. We have a history of expertise in these areas. These are significant wins we've had. So it can know all that and then answer accordingly. And I can do a different one for marketing, a different one for coaching, etc. And then also, if you use Claude, which I've been really impressed with the more I use Claude, I can set up projects so it stays contextual within those folders. And you can see there at the bottom, that co-CEO, I've pasted in there. So that's how it's going to act for that project. So it knows all about that. So those are some simple ways. If you're a paid user of ChatGPT, you can create a custom GPT and do the same thing there. Now, the last note I want to make is when we're leading change, it does help. So what we don't necessarily do is say like, hey, we need to move forward with AI. It feels like a technology solution looking for a problem. We found it super helpful to say, what's our company culture? And how do we need to change? And every time the people doing this work at the frontline leadership level, at the mid-management level, at the senior leadership level, they see that this is where we are and here's how we need to change. There'll be slight variations, but they're good conversations to have. Maybe it differs by department, etc. But by and large, they'll agree we're really kind of heavily focused and rooted here, and we think we need to change in these ways. The most common example that we see is in our bottom left corner, those red areas. It's called the control culture. It's more like process-centric, do things right, step by step, write it down. And that's good for lots of things. Certainly banks and government can be that. And lots of times what we see in general, lots of companies will feel like they're too heavy there and they want to move over to the top right, which is our green area, create, so new ideas and innovation. Or they want to move over to the direct right, where it's more about compete, get results, get things done, make it happen. Almost all the time, senior leadership is sitting in that blue. They want results. And lots of times we can get results by those new ideas up above in the green. So the reason I'm sharing this is you can always start this conversation by saying, hey, where do we all think we land? And there's very simple tools we can show you to do just that. And then everyone maps out where they think we need to go or to grow. And then you say, well, what kind of ways could we use AI to get new ideas, to get more results? Some of that seems obvious, but what we don't want to do is simply say, and this is what we're hearing all the time in the training classes, is, well, they just said they use AI. Do something with AI. And they're not getting any more clarity than that. It's literally just a mandate, and they don't know what to do with it, right? And everyone's busy. No one out there has a shortage of work sitting around in the afternoon like, I wish I had something to do. I think I'll do something. We're busy. But I'm not seeing any significant wins with AI without the investment of time, without the ability for them to try things out and play with them. And to be honest, without trying other tools as well. I know everyone in the world and their brother and the dog has Microsoft Copilot, but if we're limited to that, we're missing out on a lot of other opportunities. And I'm not saying they shouldn't be doing that, because they're probably doing that out of risk and security and concerns, but there's other ways we can still address that. As a red dominant culture that's in that control, what we're seeing is, by and large, lots of companies, they'll start out with a governance committee and make sure that we're safe. And that's great, and they should. It's the first step. There's a part 2 to this video where I walk through the steps of AI enablement from pilot to scaling, and that should be your first step. The problem is, if you just have only that governance committee, that's all you'll ever do, and you won't have new ideas, and you won't be moving forward. You need a separate group that's cross-cutting, representing different departments in the organization, that is your AI ROI committee, your AI acceleration committee, as one company calls it, your AI enablement. They're trying to move it forward. They're trying to pull new ideas. They're talking to the people on the ground to get ideas of what their workflow looks like. And they're sharing knowledge across these groups. They're setting groups to share that knowledge. And they're finding real significant wins and celebrating those wins and telling others about those wins. That red corner group, your governance committee, is not out there looking for ideas, is not out talking to people to see what they think could be done with it. They're just making sure they're safe, and that's great. But you need that other group, and you need some other structures in place to really move you forward. You could do the same with business goals, have everyone vote up business goals. Is it we need to get more predictable? Is it we need to address quality concerns? Whatever. And say, okay, what ways can we use AI to get more predictable, et cetera? There's a lot out there. Also keep in mind that AI is built into probably every tool that you use at your workplace, not just the Microsoft Office suite. But if you use Zoom, if you use Mural, if you use Miro, if you use Atlassian, and there's really powerful tools. Those companies didn't build those tools themselves. They're leveraging the LLMs out there in large part. So it's really top quality stuff from what I'm seeing. So this is one thing I think, and these types of exercises, we've literally done it in an hour, certainly plenty of times in half days. Get those conversations going, generating lots of ideas, get a direction forward and get going and start that cycle of let's do something, inspect and adapt. Start those feedback loops. Cultures are reacting, from what I'm seeing, they're reacting very predictably to this in the way I've just said. The control cultures are just all about, no, you can only use Copilot. No, the contractors can't use AI at all. No to trying out other tools. And yet the problem is, so my friends who are like that, Scott, you don't understand. I've read the stories. The risks are significant. Don't be saying that we shouldn't. I'm not saying don't do that. In fact, my concern is if that's all you're doing, it will be worse, because what we're seeing as a trend is the people at your company that really want to be doing stuff with AI, who know the power of AI, tinkering with it, whatever at home, they're going to start using it for work, but from home. That's that shadow AI side. And now we're really in trouble, because that is when they upload the Excel file of the IP information or the financial numbers or whatever, because they're not getting a chance to do it at work and they don't realize the risks. So to me, it's a bigger problem than not trying to find ways to how can we use it safely, securely for other needs and opportunities at the company outside of just Microsoft Copilot. There's your middle square around the AI governance and why that's very important first step. And the second half of that is your AI enablement team. You're not going to get the results from compete or create. And that collaboration matters in that last square. The best ideas come from the people closest to the work. The best ideas come from people who are talking about it, sharing ideas, sharing knowledge. And the companies I'm seeing, we just did a recent interview with Chris Lucian down at Hunter. So check our YouTube channel for that, because I was really blown away on how much they've leveled up. But they're leveling up so fast with AI because they have these dedicated learning hours and the people go out and dig in. And that's great, but the real power is they come back together and they pair and they mob on problems together, and that's where they're sharing the knowledge. Like, hey, wait, we could actually do this, or I just learned this thing. And that's the most valid, useful learning. These people know what applies right now, right here for this task, this job, this need. But rarely do we see companies have anything in terms of dedicated learning time on a regular basis. You might think, no, our L&D group's on top of that. We have a budget for training. So, I mean, I can rewind a bit from before when I was first in the space and doing training, and we would say, yeah, where's our training budget? We get $1,000 a year. I'm like, $1,000 a year is a drop in the bucket. We would have people go through 7 weeks of training in a year, and all valid for lots of different reasons. I'm not talking about going to outside training, although that's important too. I'm saying what's happening inside the walls, because if we get that going inside the walls, you're going to be fine. You'll figure things out. The people are learning on their own, and they're sharing that learning on their own within those walls, and that's really, really powerful. So those are structures we would set up, the learning hour and the kind of ways we collaborate and pair on things. I don't want people to be pushing back that someone would pair with someone else, whether that's a developer or someone else just kind of sitting at someone else's desk working together on things. There's well-known companies done TED Talks on how they just pair all the time. I'm not saying that, but they've proven it can work and have really great results. So those are just some of the ideas I really want to put out there. Look for the other video about the steps of enablement, where I just briefly walk through step 1, step 2, step 3. And if you have questions, comments on this, reach out, let us know. We're happy to have conversations, set up a meeting, and we can walk you through, tell you some of the stories. The main thing is get something going to move forward, because the clock is ticking. Winter is coming for the expert leaders and for those companies who the leadership can't get them there, and for their people. So happy reading on all this and the related information on that, and good luck on your journey.